waiting for me?
At this time, I would like to call to order the Lancaster Criminal Justice Commission.
All righty, roll call. Commission members Brown,
Here.
Greer,
Present.
Johnson,
Present.
Vieira,
Present.
Vice Chairman Christ,
Present.
Chairman Augusta.
Present.
Thank you. It appears we have no public to address the commissions on agendized items at this time.
At this time, we would like to move to new business items, and before we begin, we're going to have a slight deviation on the agenda. I would like to move new business item number 6, which is a report from a presentation by the head deputy from the LA County District Attorney's Office, the Antelope Valley branch. That would be Mr. John Nantrop. We would like to move that to new business item number 2. This time, we'll begin with new business item number 1, and that would be approval of regular meeting minutes of December 10th, 2008. Entertain a motion?
I'd like to make a motion we approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, now you'll take a vote using your voting buttons.
Good.
Thank you.
This time we'll move to new business item, the new business item number 2, and I would like at this time to introduce Mr. John Nantrop. He is the head deputy in charge of the Antelope Valley District Attorney's Office. Mr. Nantrop.
Good morning. Well, first I'd like to say I'm very pleased to have an opportunity to address the committee or commission, and Mr. Augusta had approached me a month or two ago about perhaps giving you an opportunity to know a little bit more about how the District Attorney's Office interfaces with law enforcement efforts here in this community. And first I'd like to say I've been here myself for since 2006, the last year, 2007, 2008, in 2008 as the head deputy. Before that I was the assistant head deputy. Prior to that, I had other duties in the office and other places. I was down in Los Angeles working in a unit that handled the prosecution of murders and assaults on police officers. Now, as I've come out here working in the branch, which has been my home, branches have been my home for most of my career, I've had an opportunity to work in the Valley and other places that service the communities. And one thing I've noticed here is that Antelope Valley is very unique in its geography, unique in its population in a lot of ways, but clearly has a community that is very involved and very concerned about the level of service that's provided, about the safety of their community. We have, my office has grown considerably since when it first came out, I think in the 80s, the office was quite small. Now, with the group changing demographics, increased population, we have our office has grown to a staff of about 40 prosecutors, and we handle everything from the misdemeanors to the felony filings. And as I'm sure that the captain has advised you, that we have increased enforcement efforts over the last few years. We've been meeting new and growing challenges having to do with gangs and other things in the community that require special attention. But one of the things that has happened is that the increased enforcement efforts and increased prosecution efforts have placed a tremendous strain on the system here. And for example, we have, I don't have the final numbers, but I'm quite certain that we have processed over 4,000 felony filings last year. Misdemeanor filings are that go through my office are going to be probably 13,000, 14,000, but the total for the court, from the numbers I understand, there are maybe close to 20,000 misdemeanor cases. Now, those misdemeanor cases, are everything from driving under the influence, spousal batteries, things of that nature. Things that actually, graffiti, things of that nature, things that will definitely impact the quality of life in this community, or at least the perception of that quality. And so we have an operation now that has surpassed Van Nuys in felony filings, where misdemeanor work looks like we're on par with a place like Compton. Very busy courthouse. We're one of the most busiest courthouses in the county. Now, the district attorney or my office has been pretty responsive in providing me with the personnel I need to be able to handle this challenge. And just to give you an example, when I first got here a couple of years ago, we had a lot of empty offices. I don't have any empty offices anymore. Those are filled up, which is good. Now, when I get new people coming in, I'm looking for a place to put them. And the nature of the way we handle our prosecutions, how we come to prosecute, is something that you forgive me if you already know this, but I want to give you just a little background of how this works. The Sheriff's Department or other law enforcement agents, such as the Highway Patrol, there are the direct investigative agencies. They will make an arrest. They'll process that arrest. They'll book the suspect or cite him out. They'll do those reports that document the circumstances surrounding the arrest. And then they will present it to my office. I have I have now 3 dedicated deputies that all they do is handle the filings, the cases that come in. That is presented to my deputies, or sometimes directly to me, depending on the seriousness of the case. And we will look at it, see if it meets our criteria for filing. In other words, there are times where you'll have a very good, legitimate arrest, good police work or investigation, but nevertheless, the evidence doesn't materialize that will warrant or even support a successful prosecution. That does happen. And then we have a very good cooperative working relationship with the Sheriff's Department, both Palmdale and Lancaster. And they have been very responsive to suggestions from our office and requests for additional investigation support, gathering additional information. I think the quality of our work in this cooperative effort has improved for both agencies. And that information comes in, and if it meets the criteria, and basically that criteria is there sufficient evidence to prosecute this case in front of a jury that would support a guilty verdict beyond a reasonable doubt, okay, which is a very subjective opinion. Sometimes we have to look at it very carefully, but that is the criteria for filing. And After that case is filed, then it goes in the system. The defendant is arraigned. It's set for prelim. A preliminary hearing is where it's a hearing, not before a jury, but before a judge, to determine if there's sufficient evidence to warrant a criminal trial. And then after that, it goes on to the calendars for the criminal trials and for trial. Now, what you must realize is that of this volume, these 4,000 felony cases that are coming in, these 20,000 misdemeanors, some of them are directly cited in, there's citation type situations that I don't directly deal with, but most of the misdemeanors and things go through my office, all the felonies do. That just the numbers themselves would show you that it's an impossibility to trial of these cases. The bulk of our cases are resolved through settlement, which means that there's sometimes you hear the term plea bargain, okay, which is, I guess I don't like the term, but it's not inaccurate. There is a bargain struck. We have determined what we believe would be a legitimate penalty, within the realm of what we might receive after trial. The defense, understanding what their exposure is, we have to give them some motivation to get to resolve the cases, hopefully early. And that is the bulk of our cases are resolved by that. Now, understanding though that we have all kinds of cases that come in. Some of them are nonviolent offenses, and some are violent offenses, predatory type offenses. I think that I'll be supported by the Sheriff's Department when I say that our efforts on violent offenses and our let's say our posture on how we deal with those is quite different than a lot of the other cases. For example, with the growing gang problem that we've had, and the sheriffs have stepped up enforcement efforts and tried to address this, and I think that they are showing some success, but like with everything, it's small, it's incremental sometimes. Our efforts in this regard have been to take a very firm stand when it comes to gang crime, assaults, weapons charges, things of that nature. There's also been, we've had a growing problem with burglaries. Now, I think the sheriffs have been able to impact that by their enforcement efforts. They've targeted some areas. We've had a lot of, with the downturn in the economy and the housing market, I guess we've had a lot of homes that have been fallow or unoccupied, and they've been victimized. But also, within that, we've also had residential burglars that are occupied have been targeted by criminals. And we have, it's not a new problem, but it seems to have increased. And I think that, though, that they have been able to impact that somewhat with your numbers, they indicating that they've been able to impact that. And we've tried to take a very firm stand on that as well. As the second part of this is when it comes into the courtrooms, is we take a very dim view of this type of activity too, and try and get appropriate penalties, severe penalties if possible. And I think we've been largely successful in those type of efforts. But the one thing that you may need to realize is that with this volume that is going through the courtroom, you know that you may not be aware that our courthouse, when it was initially built, was built for what they assumed the community was going to be. And so they built the courthouse, but they didn't complete it. And as a result, we do not have, still do not have, enough courtrooms and enough judges to handle the volume that's coming through. If you look at the activity that comes through our courthouse compared to someplace like Van Nuys or Compton or something like that, we don't have the same number of courtrooms to handle the volume that they're handling. For example, we have one preliminary hearing court. Now, every felony case that I said, of those 4,000 cases, if it doesn't resolve at arraignment or earlier or at prelim, that means there has to be a preliminary hearing. That hearing has to be conducted, which means that we call witnesses and we present evidence before the court. We have one courtroom to do that. Van Nuys, for example, has 3. Actually, probably 4. San Fernando has 2. But they're not near as busy as we are. And so these other courtrooms, I'm just to give you an example, the resources. And so these are the challenges that are presented to the court itself, the courthouse itself, to my office in trying to be able to manage this volume through this system. And we were successful in getting some monies to get 2 additional courtrooms built, and those should be coming online in February. And we've got I believe we have a commitment for the judges to fill those positions, and that will help us a lot. But by a lot means because we already had a problem. So there are 4 other unfinished courtrooms in the building, and it's one of these things that we're going to have to look at as to how to get these completed so that we're able to really address the actual need of the community here, so we can have a couple of preliminary hearing courtrooms, a couple of maybe a long cause court. And a long cause court, I'm sure you're aware that a lot of times our high profile cases end up going downtown because they're going to take a long time to try, which means that, like right now, one of my deputies is trying the park and ride case where a young girl was murdered several years ago. It's downtown right now. And so that means that the witnesses, the parents, everybody has to drive all the way downtown every day to be able to attend the trial. My deputy, the prosecutors are down there. The law enforcement witnesses have to go down there every day. And plus, the community up here does not have the benefit of being able to monitor to see what's going on directly. And it's not only expensive, but for the biggest part, as far as the community here being able to do it, the community here, as far as the jury being comprised of community members, is not available. And so that's something that I think that I want you to be aware of. I know it's one of these things that you should understand, that it is quite a significant problem that we're suffering through right now. And so every day, and since I've been here, and it's been with increased enforcement efforts, which we need the increased enforcement efforts, but then it just exacerbates the issue of how many cases we have coming in the system with the courts available. So I would say that and the biggest problem is here nowadays is that, and it always has been, is that money to do this. And it's no secret that the state is going through some severe problems right now. So I'm not sure how we're going to be able to address this. And you know, the local community, the cities are going to be strapped for money too. This is really state building. It's going over to the state. It was previously a county building. And so how do we address this, and is something that I think we're going to need further discussion on. But I want you to be aware of that, because I may be, along with local law enforcement stuff, looking for community support to see, because there's supposedly monies that are set aside for improvements in this courthouse now in the budget. But God knows what's going to happen with the budget, with what's going on right now. And but there may, in the very near future, might be looking for efforts to make sure that that money is spent and we get before it's taken away, and get that targeted to completing this courthouse so that we'll be able to provide the service this community deserves. Now we have there's other aspects of my office that I'd like to talk to you about. That we have the way it's comprised. We have a lot of felony filings that come in. They could be burglaries, they could be robberies, they could be assaults, domestic violence cases, or sexual assaults, things of that nature. And the way my office handles these things sometimes depends on the nature of the crime. For example, I have one of the things I'm particularly pleased with the results of something I did was a couple of years ago we set up a unit that handles what we call our VIP program. It's a victim impact program, but these are cases that are particularly vulnerable victims, whether it be sexual assault victims, child abuse, things of that nature, elder abuse sometimes, the domestic violence situations. And so all of those cases, I've got 6 deputies that I've assigned and dedicated to just handling those cases. And the reason that we have them dedicated to handling those cases like that is because these victims oftentimes are, well, by the very nature, everybody's traumatized by being a victim, usually. But these are very serious and personal type of injuries that I don't want in my office, and the DA's office as a whole, does not want the victims being handed from DA to DA, prosecutor to prosecutor, which is sometimes the necessity. Like I said, we're not the only office that has a lot of volume and a lot going on. It's just how we're trying to address it. And I don't think anybody else in the county is laboring under the conditions we are. But the fact is that because of the volume, because of staffing, and things of that nature, sometimes, some cases, a DA might be assigned to have 2 cases and they both come due at the same time. And we do not control that. The defense controls when they're going to go to trial, basically. Okay? They have certain rights as to when a case goes to trial. And so sometimes you might have a DA saying to another, coming to me and saying, look, I got this conflict. I'll have to put another deputy on the case and say, okay, you're going to try this one. Get ready to go. And for a sexual assault victim, for example, that's, injured in ways that we can't even imagine, to feel like they're being passed around like so much bagged goods, okay, is not something that we find acceptable. So what we do is we vertically prosecute these cases. So the deputies that are assigned to the case, I have one person that is set up to file these cases, and she manages the rest of the team. But then after the case has been assigned to a deputy, they meet with the victims, they sit down with the investigating officers, and they what we call vertical prosecution. They handle that case to completion and make the appearances, have the point of contact for the victims. And I've like I said, I'm particularly pleased by the way that's turned out. I don't believe there's any other branch in the county that has dedicated as many deputies to this as I have. I've got 6 full-time deputies full-time. That's their only assignment. We have the nature of like gang crime. Now we have within our office, the district attorney's office as a whole, we have the hardcore gang division. Now the hardcore gang division, I used to be a deputy that tried these cases years ago, basically handles very serious assaults, usually murders. There's usually enough to keep them busy with murder cases that they don't have time for a lot of the other gang crime. okay? So, but that's what they do. They vertically prosecute. They will file those cases, and they will vertically prosecute them and take them to completion. Very good success rate. We've had, right now we've got Deputy D.A. Sherwood that's assigned to hardcore gangs. We lost a deputy, Benny Osorio, who was just recently appointed to the bench and is now sitting on the bench here in Lancaster, and he was our gang prosecutor as well. And I think it's a testament to the quality of the individuals that we have working these cases. The fact that here he has now been appointed as a bench member here to now further serve this community in that capacity. And so now I'm going to be looking. I'm a little short-staffed right now because I lost 2 of my people to be appointed as judges. The other one was Bernie LaForteza, who was a very key member of my operation there. I have, in addition to the hardcore gang, we have other very serious crimes that come through that require special attention. I had 3, I've lost one, 3 deputies that are dedicated. That's their job, is to handle these specially assigned cases that I give them. I've chosen one of these deputies is a deputy by the name of Michael Blake. You may have heard about his efforts in some of the high-profile cases around here. Outstanding, dedicated prosecutor. He called me last night at 9 at night to tell he was down trying this case downtown to give me an update of what's going on and talk about an issue that had presented itself in the case. So we have a lot of communication going on there. Very smart guy. We have another guy, Jonathan Chung, is new to our office for the last couple of years, but he was a prosecutor, gang prosecutor down in a southern county. He came up here. His brother is Carlos Chung, who's now sitting on the bench up here, who is also a former gang prosecutor. And so in our current bench makeup here at the court, I have quite a few of these judges used to work for me, which is kind of, or either worked for me here as the head deputy or worked for me years ago when I was in another capacity when I was supervising them. Kathleen Blanchard is one of our new bench members up here. And so it's nice. I'm very pleased to see them progress in their careers, and I have nothing but confidence in what's happening with our bench here as it's growing and building here, because I happen to know these individuals, and like I say, I knew them when I was in direct communication with them on a regular basis on cases, and sometimes give them a little nudge here and there. So, but they're quite accomplished and good choices for this community. So, in summary, what we have is we have a lot of volume, a lot of different types of cases. Some of these cases need to be, need very special attention. We try and give them that by vertical prosecution. We have a good team of deputies that I've got that are in the calendar courts to assign to the other felony cases that they get. And there's a lot of supervision, a lot of communication as to the status of the case, what's going on in the case, strategies, things of that nature. But the crew of prosecutors I have, most of these people, now think about it, they live down, a lot of them don't live up here. They live down in the valley and other places in L.A. County. They chose to come up here. They might have been assigned up here, they worked for me, they left, they want to come back. And that says something about their dedication to this, their commitment to this community, and the esprit that we, the core, the morale that we have here in our sense of mission in serving this community. And so with that, I would like to see if you have any questions about what we're doing, or if I can answer them, I would like to.
If you had a wish list to fix the problems, what would it be?
Get those courtrooms open. We get courtrooms, I'll get judges. We get courtrooms, I'll get additional staffing.
And you say that the courtrooms need to be finished. What needs to be done inside?
Oh. Well, basically, when they built the building, it's a beautiful building, and if you've been visited any of the other courtrooms, you'll see it's like this. It's nice. It's nice. And wood trim, everything else. But if you took all this out of here, what you'd have would be block walls and wires hanging from the ceilings. That's what's in there. It's like a parking garage inside the unfinished courtrooms. There is nothing in there. Nothing. Just it's concrete. And so what needs to happen is they need to do the internal, build out the internal. They have to, there's a lockup considerations. Now we just, each courtroom has its own little secure facility for bringing in-custody defendants in. And that has to be completed for the additional courtrooms as well. And all of this is considerable expense per courtroom. And originally, I thought the estimate was about $1 million per courtroom. I thought that was a lot of money. But I learned that it wasn't, because I think it's costing about $2 million per courtroom to get this done. So I was very pleased when I got 4 courtrooms that are left to find out that there's $8 million in that budget for improvements. It's the state budget. It's the state budget. You see, the courts have moved from local control, county control, to more state control, and the county has been giving over the buildings. These are like the county buildings have been going over to the state, so they're responsible for the maintenance and stuff like that. It kind of put us in kind of an unusual position, because like just to get these last 2 courtrooms built out, we found county money for that kind of, okay? But nobody really wants to spend county money because they know that the state's taken over the building. And so it's kind of like this, we're in this this area where nobody's really sure who wants to be responsible for what. But all I can say is that I'm a firm believer in local control and local community accountability. And the more we remove this away to the state, who has, and look, there are other places in the state that might be in worse position. They might be holding their trials in trailers. And that's terrible, but that's not my problem. What I'm interested in is this community, but the state will have to divide these assets all over the place. Now, somehow or another, they found $8 million that went into the budget here for court and house improvements. They also found $50 million for a new courthouse down in Santa Clarita. Now, I don't want to, they make their decisions. But that new courthouse down there will gain, that $50 million, I think, will gain, because there's already a facility there, okay? I think will give them a net gain of 1 courtroom. That's a lot for 1 courtroom, if you ask me. Where I've got 4 courtrooms that could be completed, and we need them. And we get them, and if we can do them with that $8 million, that's fine. I just want to make sure they can spend their other money elsewhere. But as long as they got $8 million there, and I've checked, nobody seems to know where it's supposed to go. What it's doing is just sitting there. I want to try and get some people thinking about let's get this going before they take it away. Kind of use it or lose it on the budget type of thing. And if it's already committed, if we can get it committed, I think that we have an opportunity to get. Maybe a rare opportunity to actually get this courthouse completed. Now, one of the arguments they'll say, well, we don't have the judges. Hey, you know what? I believe that it's like the Field of Dreams movie. If you build it, they will come. If we got courtrooms, they're going to have a hard time saying we're not going to give you judges for it. And so if we get it done, I think that we'll have the opportunity to serve this community in a lot of ways. And not just criminally, because the strain here, we have a responsibility. I don't. But the court has a responsibility as a community to service the business community. We have a lot of civil suits. There's things of this nature. And the alternative could possibly be sending all those people down to Chatsworth to do their civil trials so that we could have the criminal trials up here. Now, that's not something that I don't think that would be good for this community up here. But I'm just saying, as the demands are increasing, and they're not going to, the demands are going to continue to increase. We know that. And we're already having a problem. So what I'm proposing here is that if we get this built out, it'll give us a lot of flexibility, and hopefully I'll even be able to have the ability to try cases that will go for more than 3 or 4 weeks here. Serious cases that this community cares about. And it's not like they just, well, what happened to them? Well, they were being tried downtown, something. It's something that this community will be aware that we're taking care of business up here. And we have local community members as jurors.
How can we as a body help you accomplish that?
I understand that you're an information gathering body, and hopefully you'll be able to give advice at some point. I think, though, that you represent the community here, and I think that there's going to be an opportunity to increase community awareness as to the issue that we're facing here. It's kind of hard to, nobody gets up on, it's not in the headlines that we're behind the 8 ball as far as being able to process the cases we have here and stuff like that. A lot of people are blissfully unaware of what's going on with the criminal processes here in this community. Hopefully most people are unaware of the extent of crime that might be in the community. If we're doing our job properly, they feel secure and they don't feel they don't take incidents out of proportion. I mean, that's what what we're supposed to do, is make people feel that this community, and rightfully so, I mean, not just an illusion, but they feel secure, that their quality of life is what it should be. And so this is not something that comes out a lot. I think that we can address this by educating, or just increasing the awareness. I think that there might be an opportunity for political voices to speak to the court administration. I have some ideas in that regard that I may be trying to do, the court administration, and see if we can get that money targeted. Before, a year or so ago, I'd actually had the thought, when we were had a little more money, was going to actually, since nobody wanted to take responsibility for it, was trying to get the local cities to kick in some money for some courtrooms. And Mark and I talked about this before, but I don't even think that's a viable alternative now, given what's going on with the budget. And so that may be something. I hope that's not something we need to address if things straighten themselves out. If we got that money there, I'd like to just get it used, and it's the simplest solution and most expedient, and get that going. So part of that, I think, is just increasing the awareness of the issue that's we're presented here, that you can do, whether it's advising the council, okay, advising if they're, whatever avenues of communication you have, that gets people at least thinking in terms that this is something we need to address, because it's the courts are, the judges can't talk about it really. They can't be very political. They just kind of have to grin and bear it. And but the truth is what happens is the cases get sent from here to San Fernando. I've had cases sent to Norwalk. Can you imagine the commute? Long Beach, 2 hours to get there, just to, and then when we pull the deputies out of the field to go down there, they're not here. We were just talking before this meeting started about some issues with our courts and with preliminary hearings. I told you how busy it is down there. I mean, we're doing the business of 3 courtrooms in 1 court. And so one of the issues that happens is, because of so much volume, one of the problems that happens, we have deputies sitting there in court waiting for their hearing, their trial, and they're not on the street. They're not on the street. They're just sitting there. So one of the things we've worked out is that if they're on duty, they're out in the field, we can call them in. We've got an agreement with the court to do that. I think it's working out pretty well, so that we're not pulling them out of the street off the streets unnecessarily. So they're able to service the community. But if you send them to San Fernando, they're not here. You send them to Norwalk, forget about it. And so this issue impacts the law enforcement efforts in many, many ways. It's not just an inconvenience. It actually impacts our law enforcement efforts. And I think so the awareness of this and just making sure people are aware of the problem and not ignoring it.
Mr. Nanthrope, you mentioned that there was $8 million of funding available for the Antelope Valley Courthouse. Who do we go to see who has control of that money and how to get it spent?
I believe that there's an administration within the Los Angeles Superior Court that handles these kind of improvements. They were instrumental in helping move things along on these last two. And also looking at contingency plans because we were under kind of a crisis situation months ago, in getting some other things moving. I intend to explore that probably maybe through the supervisor's office and see if I can get something set up there too. I think a coordinated effort.
Can we help you with that?
I think
do we go
so.
to George Runner? Do we go to Antonovich? Where should